I've never been a believer in the supernatural, or aliens, or anything like that. To me, the world always seemed straightforward. What you see is what you get. But what happened to me one stormy night in the middle of Kansas has changed everything I thought I knew about reality. I don't even tell most people this story because it sounds too bizarre to be true. But here it is, as it happened to me. It started with a thunderstorm warning. I was driving back home from a business trip, just me, my truck, and an empty stretch of highway. The forecast had mentioned severe weather, but I figured I could beat it. That's the thing about storms in the Midwest, they're unpredictable. One minute the sky's clear, and the next, it's like the apocalypse is rolling in. I was maybe 50 miles from the nearest town when the sky turned a sickly green. The wind picked up, and the radio began crackling with interference. I could feel the tension in the air, the way you can before seeing sheets of it so heavy I could barely see the road in front of me. I should have pulled over, but I kept going. I didn't want to get stuck out there. That's when I saw the first one. A flash of light in the sky, not lightning, but something else. It was almost like a starlight. It moved too fast and erratically to be handling. I told myself it was too fast and kept driving. But then I saw it again, closer, darting behind me. My gut told me something wasn't right. I'd driven through countless storms, but this was different. The air felt charged, like it was coming. And then, out of nowhere, the rain stopped. Just stopped. 1 second it was a deluge, and the next, everything was eerily calm. I slowed down, unsure of what to do. That's when I noticed the tornado. I thought it was a tornado at first. It was this massive, swirling vortex, but it wasn't moving like a tornado should. It hovered, almost as if it was pulsing on the fire. Blue to white, running in silver. And the sound, it wasn't a roar of a regular storm. It was a low frequency hum that I could feel in my chest, like the rumble of a jet engine. I pulled over, unable to look away. That's when I saw the figures. At first, I thought it was just debris being tossed around the room. And I realized they were moving, walking, toward us. They didn't seem panicked or afraid, just drawn to me, like moths to a flame. My first instinct was to get out of there, but curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my phone and started recording, though the video didn't capture much, just a lot of static and blurred lights. I stepped out of the truck to get a better look, and that's when I felt it, the pull. It was like gravity had shifted, tugging me toward the vortex. I had to brace myself against the side of the truck to keep from stumbling forward. The figures, there were maybe a dozen of them now, were getting closer to the swirling light. I shouted at them, asking if they needed help, but they didn't respond. It was like they couldn't hear me. Then I saw her. A woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing a yellow raincoat. She was closer to me than the others, and her eyes locked onto mine. There was something desperate in her expression, like she was trying to fight whatever was pulling her in. She mouthed something, but I couldn't hear over the hum. Without thinking, I ran toward her. Every step felt like I was wading through quicksand, the pull growing stronger the closer I got. When I reached her, I grabbed her arm and tried to pull her back. She shook her head violently, pointing at the vortex. Her lips moved again, and this time, I could just barely make it out. Run, I didn't understand. Run where? From what? Before I could ask, the ground beneath us started to shake. The vortex expanded, the light growing brighter and more intense. I could feel the heat from it now, like standing too close to a bonfire. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and then there was this shift. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like reality itself rippled, like a pebble dropped in a pond. The woman screamed, and in that moment, I saw something in the vortex. Shapes, or shadows, moving inside the light. They weren't human. They were tall, spindly, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. They reached out, almost like they were trying to pull the figures, the people, into the vortex. I panicked. I dragged the woman back toward my truck, every muscle in my body straining against the pull. Somehow, we made it. I shoved her into the passenger seat, jumped in, and floored it. The hum was so loud now it felt like my skull was vibrating. The truck's engine roared, but it felt like we were barely moving. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The vortex collapsed in on itself with a sound like a thunderclap, and everything went dark. No lights, no hum, no figures. Just the quiet patter of rain and the rumble of my truck's engine. The woman was trembling, her eyes wide with terror. She wouldn't answer any of my questions, just kept repeating, "They're coming. They're coming." I drove us to the nearest town, a tiny place called Harper. By the time we got there, she was gone. I don't mean she ran off. I mean she vanished. The passenger door was locked, and there was no sign of her anywhere. I went to the local police, told them everything. They didn't believe me, of course. They chalked it up to the storm and maybe a little too much stress. But here's the thing. When I went back to my truck, I found her raincoat. It was soaked and torn, like it had been through a shredder. I haven't been able to make sense of it. I've searched online for similar stories, but nothing matches exactly. Tornadoes, ball lightning, even UFO sightings. None of it explains what I saw that night. And the woman, who was she? Where did she go? And what were those things in the vortex? Sometimes I wonder if I imagined the whole thing. But then I look at that raincoat, folded up in the back of my closet, and I know it was real. Whatever happened that night, it was real. And the scariest part? If she was right, and they're coming, what happens next?